This podcast is brought to you by Trophy Snack.
Welcome back to the AI Analysis Podcast. Today we're looking at another decisive episode from the Average Intelligence Podcast.
Yeah, that was quite a discussion they had.
It really was. Their hosts plunged into a truly loaded question. Are Trump and DOGE winning the fight?
A big question. And our mission today, I suppose, is to really unpack what they said about it.
Exactly. We want to go through the claims, the clarifications they offered, the points where they didn't quite see eye to eye.
To help you, our listener, sort of navigate the complexities of their conversation, get a clearer handle on things.
Because what struck me about watching their show was how dynamic it was.
Oh, definitely. It wasn't just reading points off a list. It was a real back and forth.
Lively, sometimes, a bit spirited even. One host challenging the other, pushing for more explanation.
Or correcting something. And that's actually super helpful, right? It brings out different angles.
It does. It's why we thought their conversation was worth looking at more closely.
And you could see they were grappling with their own views, too, trying to stay impartial, which is what we aim for here.
Absolutely. So this is us unpacking what they said, the arguments they presented factually without taking sides.
Okay, let's dive in then. They jumped right into DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, and some pretty audacious claims about savings right off the bat.
That Elon Musk figure came up, didn't it? Needing to save, what was it, $22 billion a day.
Every single day to pay down the deficit by July 4, 2026. I mean, that number just makes your head spin.
It's astronomical. And one of their hosts seemed, pretty optimistic about DOGE, almost gloating a little.
Maybe a little, highlighting the transparency angle, saying they literally have a website.
Implying it's all out there, clear as day. Which, sounds great on the surface.
Almost too good to be true, perhaps.
Well, that's where the other host immediately jumped in. They didn't argue about the website existing.
No, it was more about the accuracy, right?
Exactly. Questioning how reliable those figures actually are. Citing instances where DOGE apparently changed their own website.
The correct things they'd already put out there.
Right. And they brought up that specific example with Elon Musk reportedly admitting a mistake. Something about USAID funding.
Yeah.
Ebola program.
Yeah, that was it. He apparently said it was fixed quickly, but
the fact it needed fixing at all, especially on a site meant for transparency, that raises questions, doesn't it?
It really does. If the initial data is flawed, how much faith can you put in the rest of it? It's not just a typo.
It feels like a deeper issue about process, maybe due diligence, before they even publish these numbers.
And that led them into a more fundamental disagreement, moving beyond just numbers.
Yeah, into the legality of how DOGE is operating. The suggestion that they might be ignorant to the law or purposefully subverting the law.
Which is a pretty serious charge that touches on constitutional stuff, separation of powers.
It does. And they used USAID as the prime example, the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Pointing out it was set up by Congress, an independent agency.
Meaning the executive branch, where DOGE sits, can't just unilaterally clean house or cut funding whenever it wants. Congress has a say.
They even mentioned Marco Rubio being stopped from doing something similar before. It's not just theory.
No, it's about respecting the legislative process, the established structure. It's a real check on executive power.
And they mentioned actual legal challenges happening now. Multiple injunctions against DOGE.
Specifically regarding USAID, yes. These aren't just opinions. They're court orders stopping DOGE's actions, at least temporarily.
So the judiciary is definitely stepping in.
Right. And that example with the federal workers overseas was pretty stark.
The ones whose funding got cut told to come home in 30 days.
Yeah. The union sued, arguing it was an extreme risk, both financially and physically, for these people.
And a judge actually stopped it.
Put a temporary restraining order in place, apparently. So the funding continued. For now, it really shows the legal pushback DOGE is facing.
So even if the goal is saving money, the method has to be legal. Otherwise, you just hit these walls.
Exactly. It seems like a case of maybe moving too fast, maybe stepping over legal lines.
Which brings us to that other kind of messy issue they discussed, the Condoms for Gaza thing.
Ah, yes, that got a lot of press. One host clarified that DOGE admitted it was a reporting mistake.
Said the intended place was somewhere in East Africa for HIV prevention.
Right, a completely different context, potentially justifiable.
But that sparked a bit of disagreement between them right there, didn't it?
It did, because even if it was a mistake, does that just wipe away the concern?
My feeling was, if your reporting funds went to the wrong continent, even if the intended use was good, like HIV prevention.
It still raises huge questions about basic accuracy and oversight, right?
Absolutely. The initial report being that flawed, needing a public correction, it suggests a systemic problem, maybe.
I think so. It really hammers home how crucial accuracy and due diligence are with public money. Precision isn't optional.
Avoids misinterpretations, ensures accountability.
Definitely. And all this, the legal fights, the accuracy issues, ties into that bigger difference in perspective they had.
You mean the audit view versus the direct action view?
Yeah. One host was all for a USAID audit. Said there were questionable at best things that were funding.
Saw DOGE as becoming like an IRS, basically.
Yeah.
An auditor, which sounds reasonable on the surface.
But the other host had a really key concern.
That DOGE seemed to be doing more than just auditing, getting directly involved.
Exactly. Making immediate cuts, changing programs. But here's the kicker. Those changes might not save money right away.
Ah, like the employee buyouts example.
Right. If employees get bought out, they often get paid through the end of the fiscal year anyway.
So the savings don't actually show up on the books until the next fiscal year.
Which is crucial. The immediate impact might even look like more spending, or at least no savings, which confuses people.
Totally undermines the efficiency now narrative. It shows the difference between auditing and immediate executive action with delayed results.
It really does. It highlights that lag time, how savings aren't always instant, and how that gets communicated or miscommunicated.
Definitely a key insight for listeners. It's complex.
Okay, moving on. Another big point of confusion they tackled was that whole budget resolution versus spending bill thing.
Oh, yeah, that caused so much misunderstanding in the news. One host really dug into it.
Pointed out that even the House itself doesn't call it a bill. It's a resolution.
And it still needs reconciliation with the Senate, so it's not law yet.
It's not just semantics, is it? Calling it a spending bill totally changes what people think happened.
Completely. A resolution is more like a blueprint, a plan.
Exactly. It sets targets, lays out a framework. It doesn't actually spend the money like appropriations bill does.
The actual spending decisions come later during that reconciliation process or in separate bills.
So calling the initial resolution a spending bill is just inaccurate. Sets false expectations.
And speaking of false expectations, what about those claims that it would eliminate taxes on overtime and tips? That sounded huge.
Colossal, if true. But the other host did some homework there too.
Looked up the actual text on congress.gov.
Yeah, all 45 pages. And stated very clearly the words overtime and tips are nowhere in it.
Wow. So a total disconnect between the reporting and the actual document?
A massive gap. It shows how quickly misinformation spreads, even specific-sounding details.
So why were outlets like the BBC reporting it that way? That's where they had that slight disagreement, right?
Yeah, and the clarification was really helpful. The resolution is a blueprint that proposes or allows for future tax cuts.
It signals intent, maybe,
Yeah.
but doesn't actually make the cuts itself.
Precisely. It leaves the specifics, the actual legislation, to lawmakers later. It's aspirational, not executed.
So media might report the aspiration as if it's already happened. That's a huge aha moment.
It really is. Shows that you got to look at the primary source, not just headlines or summaries.
Like planning a house versus having the house built. Very different stages.
Well put. And connecting this back to the bigger picture, the resolution also called for raising the debt ceiling.
By $4.5 trillion, wasn't it?
A massive amount, which seemed kind of contradictory to also talk about $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, especially without clear spending cuts outlined.
Right. How do you square that circle? Cut taxes, raise the debt limit. Where's the balance?
It highlights that tension. And they mention how narrowly it passed the House.
And that one Republican, Thomas Massie, voted against it because of the debt ceiling increase.
Yeah, which really spotlights the internal party divisions. Even within the GOP, there was an agreement on raising the debt limit like that.
Shows the political tightrope leadership has to walk. These fiscal issues are complex, even within one party.
Absolutely. The debt ceiling is almost always contentious. Shows how hard it is to get everyone on the same page.
Okay, let's take a quick pause here. We'll be right back after the short break to talk about Social Security and more.
And we're back. Before the break, we were talking about budgets and fiscal complexities. Now let's shift to another area they discussed, Social Security.
Right, specifically allegations of widespread fraud within the system. Yeah, some pretty strong claims were mentioned. People supposedly 150 years old collecting benefits, or people who've died still getting checks.
One of the hosts seemed really convinced, saying there's tons of fraud there, which, is a common perception for some people.
It is, but the other host brought in a different perspective based on actual data,
From Morningstar and, crucially, from the Social Security Administration, the SSA itself.
which often tells a different story than the anecdotes, like the 150-year-olds claim.
Yeah, the SSA apparently has a policy since 2015 that they don't pay benefits to anyone 115 or older. So 150-year-olds getting checks. Seems unlikely based on their own rules.
Okay, that's a direct counter. But what about that Elon Musk post showing millions over 100 with the death field set to false? That sounds bad.
It does sound alarming, and it definitely points to a data management issue. A big one, potentially.
But the SSA acting commissioner clarified that, right?
Yes, and this is key. Those people aren't necessarily getting benefits. It just means the database record doesn't have a date of death entered.
So it's more like an administrative problem. Incomplete data, not necessarily payouts to dead people.
Exactly. It's a data hygiene issue, not necessarily proof of ongoing payments to the deceased or biologically impossible supercentenarians.
That distinction is huge. Data management versus active fraud often gets blurred.
Totally. Like a typo versus deliberate theft. Both are problems, but very different kinds.
And the SSA's own Inspector General report gave more context, too.
Yeah, a 2024 report. Out of $8.6 trillion paid out, about $71.8 billion were flagged as improper payments.
Which sounds like a lot.
It is a lot of money, but the report clarified most of those were overpayments, not necessarily intentional fraud.
Okay, so still an issue for efficiency and taxpayers, but not all criminal activity. Could be admin errors, rule complexities, changing circumstances not updated quickly.
Precisely. It paints a more nuanced picture than just rampant fraud.
They also mentioned a difference between the funds, retirement versus medical beneficiaries.
Right. Noting there seems to be much more fraud in the medical side, like disability claims.
They gave that example of someone getting disability for cirrhosis from alcoholism.
Yeah, which illustrates how complex and sometimes controversial disability claims can be. It involves subjective assessments of health, capacity, cause.
Which can open the door to abuse, or at least claims that feel questionable to many, even if technically allowed under current rules.
It highlights the difficulty of administering these huge programs fairly and efficiently.
And this whole discussion led them into that really big controversial idea, privatizing Social Security.
Yeah, one host suggested that could solve a giant part of it. Argued if it was like a giant index fund, people would retire with millions.
Which sounds incredibly appealing, right? Especially compared to typical Social Security return.
Very appealing vision. But the other host immediately brought up the pragmatic reality check.
The reason why they probably don't switch.
Because the federal government borrows from Social Security. Massively.
They pay it back with tax revenue,
But they're essentially borrowing your retirement money, paying it back, but not giving you the kind of market return you could have gotten.
So there's a huge incentive for the government to keep the current system, to have access to those funds for borrowing.
Exactly. Privatizing it would take away that massive pool of funds the government dips into. It would fundamentally change federal budgeting.
Which led to that really provocative statement.
The Ponzi scheme comparison.
Yeah. That if Social Security's structure, current workers paying for current retirees, was in the private market, it'd be called a Ponzi scheme. But the government can get away with it.
It's a common critique because payouts depend on new contributions, not just your own invested funds. Legally different, of course, backed by taxing power, not meant to defraud.
But the cash flow model looks similar.
Right. It's used to highlight perceived flaws in the financial model compared to market investments, raising questions about long-term sustainability and fairness.
Definitely makes you think about the structure of something we often just accept.
Okay, let's shift gears again. They also got into executive power, constitutional debates, law enforcement.
Starting with the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship.
Right. Discussing President Trump's executive order aimed at ending it.
And how that hit immediate roadblocks. Several blocks from federal judges.
9 judges apparently struck it down as unconstitutional. That's pretty definitive pushback from the judiciary.
Shows the limits of executive orders when they clash with long-standing constitutional interpretation.
Absolutely. The 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause has been interpreted for over a century to include birthright citizenship. An executive order trying to unilaterally change that is a huge overreach.
And they emphasized how incredibly hard it is to actually amend the Constitution.
That super high bar. 2/3 of Congress, 3/4 of the states ratifying.
Which, given today's political divisions, they basically said is virtually impossible for the 14th Amendment right now.
It really drives home that changing the Constitution is meant to be difficult, slow, requiring broad consensus, not something one president can just decree.
A good reminder of how the system is designed, for better or worse.
Then the conversation moved to that other really sensitive topic, temporary firearm seizure.
Based on mental health concerns or online threats, something Trump's AG apparently tried to enable.
And the reactions were immediately split, weren't they?
Yeah, one host was strongly supportive. Like, why aren't you doing that already? Especially for school shooting threats online. Focus on preventing violence.
Understandable urgency there. But the other host flagged the potential for abuse.
And the conflict with the Second Amendment. That was a clear point of mild disagreement.
Focusing on the mechanism. The counterargument was, if someone makes a credible threat, arrest them for the threat.
Which, if it leads to a felony conviction, automatically means they can't legally own firearms anyway.
Right. Using existing laws about threats and felony convictions, rather than creating a new pathway for seizure based on perhaps more subjective criteria like mental health concerns before a conviction or full due process.
So stick to existing processes versus creating new ones that might be misused.
And they warned about the precedent.
Yeah.
If you reinterpret the Second Amendment this way, what about others?
The first, fourth, fifth, the whole slippery slope idea.
Exactly. The concern that weakening protections for one right could open the door to weakening others, undermining the whole framework of constitutional liberties. It's a fundamental legal philosophy debate.
Makes you consider the ripple effects, for sure.
Okay, shifting from rights to spending again, they got into some really specific and frankly eye-watering examples of government spending on contracts.
Oh yeah, that list was something else, questioning the necessity and value.
Like a Bloomberg subscription for almost $1 million a year.
Politico, similar cost. American Banker and National Mortgage News, a $1.5 million contract for news.
Moody's credit forecast, $2.4 million. S&P Global Market Intelligence, $1.9 million.
That S&P one really raised eyebrows, didn't it? The host even mentioned potential insider trading concerns.
Yeah, like why does the government need that level of real-time market data, and could it be misused? It's a fair question.
And it just kept going. LexisNexis, $1.7 million. Experian Credit Info, over $2.4 million. Mortgage data via Library of Congress, $2.2 million.
Plus those multiple contracts for legal support services adding up to $40 million.
$40 million for external legal help. You'd think the government has lawyers.
It paints a picture of huge spending on external services. Makes you wonder about procurement. Are these competitively bid? Are they really needed at this scale? Is it good value?
And that $40 million for legal support, does that mean they're understaffed internally, or is it just easier to outsource? Is it actually cheaper?
Good questions. It highlights the sheer scale of federal operations and reliance on the private sector.
And connects back to that theme of operational efficiency, or maybe the lack of it.
Which led them to those simpler, almost funny examples, like pennies.
Right, the classic example. Stop making pennies because they cost more to produce than they're worth. Seems obvious, yet
we still make them. A symbol of bureaucratic inertia, maybe.
And that anecdote about the kids saving a company millions just by changing the font to use less ink?
Leading to speculation the government could save hundreds of thousands of gallons on ink just by using a smaller font size on all its documents.
Sounds trivial, but scale it up across the entire federal government.
And it could be huge savings. It shows how small efficiencies, aggregated, can matter, but also how hard they might be to implement in a massive bureaucracy.
Things a private business might do quickly seem to take forever or never happen in government.
And then the conversation veered into, well, more unconventional territory. Gold.
Yeah, conspiracy theories territory, a bit. The fact Fort Knox hasn't been audited since 1974.
Which always fuels speculation. Plus, Elon Musk apparently making noise about a live stream tour of Fort Knox.
And a chat participant linking it to an alleged Bank of England gold shortage, and Trump Musk making noise right after.
Classic online discussion points. But you brought in some crucial context there.
Well, it's important, right? Neither the US nor the UK is on the gold standard anymore.
Exactly. Our currencies are fiat currencies backed by full faith and credit, not physical gold in a vault.
So the amount of gold in Fort Knox, while interesting, doesn't directly determine the value of the dollar like it used to.
Its role has fundamentally changed. Stability relies more on economic strength, political stability, fiscal integrity.
A key distinction often lost in those gold conspiracy discussions.
And then, to top it off, that wild claim from a chat participant.
Saying they hacked and crashed the Fedi personally in 2022 made it not exist.
Yeah, that's a prime example of an extraordinary, unverified claim you find online.
Yeah.
Crashing the entire U.S. Federal Reserve System. That wouldn't exactly be kept quiet.
No kidding. It would be global news instantly.
It's a stark reminder to be critical of sources, especially fantastical claims lacking any credible evidence. Healthy skepticism is essential.
Absolutely essential in today's information environment.
And that really leads into the broader theme that felt very present in their conversation. The frustration, the exhaustion with politics and news itself.
You really felt it. One host talking about just distrusting news outlets because the narratives are always conflicting.
Like the DOGE example. Huge savings versus, no, it's not working. How do you know what to believe?
And that feeling of reading anything and wondering about the agenda behind it. Are they withholding info, making it sound scarier?
It's exhausting. Constantly having to be that critical, that vigilant, it reflects that wider erosion of trust.
Makes it hard to form informed opinions when you suspect everything is spun.
They also mentioned that pasta approach to lawsuits by Trump and Musk.
Throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks.
But the counterpoint was, that might not work so well against the federal government because so many people and entities can sue the government back.
It's not like suing another company. The government faces legal challenges from all sides. A different battlefield.
A pragmatic point about legal strategy. And a core frustration that came through was that feeling.
That the executive branch just has way too much power over your everyday life.
Yeah, and linking it not just to Trump, but to decades of expanding the federal government, a long-term trend.
Reflecting that ongoing debate about the balance of power and whether the executive has gradually gained too much influence through regulations, executive orders.
Leading to that feeling of overreach, maybe a lack of accountability to the legislative process or the public.
And they were honest about their own fatigue, too, how politics is just everywhere, inescapable.
But also acknowledging you still need to stay abreast of it while being critical. It's a tough balance.
Staying informed without getting totally burned out by the constant fighting.
And that sentiment that everybody has to fucking fight all the time instead of what's best for the average American, that really captured a widespread feeling, I think.
A desire for more constructive, solutions-focused discussion. Less perpetual conflict.
Which is why it was nice they highlighted some positive audience engagement, too.
Yeah, that chat participant bringing up really different topics. Space is fuel and material, quantum physics.
Quantum yin-yang. Space is a material liquid. Gravity and entropy are a liquid pressure. Really out there, fascinating ideas.
Shows how engaged listeners can broaden the conversation beyond the immediate political stuff.
Absolutely. Highlights the curiosity out there, the interconnectedness of ideas. A good reminder.
So as we wrap this up, we've really covered a lot of ground from that Average Intelligence podcast episode. DOGE, budgets, legal challenges, constitutional questions.
And we saw how their discussion, especially their disagreements, brought out the nuances often missed in simple headlines. It's rarely simple.
No, the devil is always in the details, isn't it? And that's the point of digging in like this.
Trying to cut through the noise, understand the layers, see not just what's said, but how and why, and maybe what's left out.
Exactly. So as you navigate the endless stream of information constantly coming at you, from politicians, news outlets, your social media feed, remember this exercise.
The real power isn't just accepting or rejecting, it's asking. What is the precise detail being presented? What is the full context it might be missing? And what are the often unspoken implications for you as a citizen and an individual?
Because, as we've heard today, the truth often lies not just in the statements explicitly made, but in the crucial questions left unasked, and in the fuller picture patiently waiting to be uncovered.
We choose to go to the moon and investigate and do the other things.
Weird. Weird.
You know, someone said that frickin' Panera's Pepsi's taste funny.
Better.
No, I mean,
What?